The receptionist mistook him for a beggar, unaware that he was the millionaire owner of the hotel. To kick things off, let us know in the comments which city you're tuning in from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the tale. It was a crisp Chicago morning at the Grand Majestic Hotel when Olivia nearly spilled her coffee as a disheveled man shuffled into the opulent lobby. He looked like he'd wandered out of a storm. Wild hair, a scruffy beard, a backpack that seemed to have survived 3 world wars, and muddy sneakers. No, Olivia muttered, abandoning her post at the reception desk to intercept the stranger. Sir, excuse me, sir. The man turned, revealing sun-weathered skin and strikingly handsome eyes. For a split second, Olivia hesitated. There was something in his gaze that didn't match his ragged appearance. Are you lost? She asked, forcing a professional smile while positioning herself between him and the guests sipping afternoon tea. I can direct you to the nearest shelter. It's only 6 blocks away. Alexander Sterling stifled a laugh. 3 weeks living incognito on the streets of Chicago had transformed him into exactly what he appeared to be, a bearded vagrant in tattered clothes. And now, back in his own hotel, one of his employees was trying to usher him out. Actually, he said, adjusting the strap of his torn backpack, I'd like a room. Olivia blinked twice, certain she'd misheard. A room here? She glanced nervously at the other guests. Mrs. Vanderbilt, a Chicago socialite, was already making that pinched face that signaled an imminent complaint. Sir, this is the Grand Majestic. Our rooms start at $500 a night and go up from there. Alexander nodded solemnly. I understand. The shelter on 52nd Street takes daily payments, Olivia whispered, lowering her voice. And look. She dug into her purse and pulled out a crumpled $5 bill. Here for a sandwich? You look so thin. Her unexpected kindness caught him off guard. Alexander stared at the bill, likely her own lunch money, and something stirred in his chest. When was the last time someone cared whether he was hungry? Not the billionaire CEO, but just him. That's very kind, he said, genuinely touched. But I really need a room. I have a credit card. Olivia let out a dramatic sigh. Vagrants always cause trouble, she muttered, scanning the lobby. Fine, but if there's any issue, she made the universal "you're out" hand gesture. Promise no trouble. As they walked back to the reception desk, Olivia discreetly signaled Mark, the security guard, to keep an eye on him. The man was too polite to be just a drifter, but still better safe than sorry. Name? She asked, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Alexander Sterling. Olivia typed without looking up. ID and credit card, please. Alexander handed over a dusty driver's license. What kind of room would you like, sir? What's available? Olivia checked the system. We have a very nice standard room, she said, picking the cheapest option, $250 a night. Actually, Alexander said with a hint of amusement, how about the presidential suite? Olivia stopped typing. The presidential suite, if it's available. Sir, the presidential suite is $3,000 a night. Perfect. Olivia stared at him like he'd sprouted a second head. Was he serious? She checked the system again. The suite was available. But I'll need to run your payment first, she said slowly, for verification. Alexander handed her a matte black credit card. Olivia held it under the light, checking for signs of fraud, then swiped it. She held her breath, expecting a decline. Approved. She looked at the screen, then at Alexander, then back at the screen. It went through, she mumbled, incredulous. Great. But Olivia lowered her voice. Sir, are you sure this card isn't stolen? We've had cases with people in tough situations. Alexander nearly laughed. I'm pretty sure it's legit. Olivia wasn't convinced. Quietly, she picked up the desk phone and dialed the bank. Hello, this is Olivia Dubois from the Grand Majestic Hotel. I need to verify a transaction. She whispered the card numbers, keeping an eye on Alexander. Yes, I'll hold. Alexander pretended to browse a tourist brochure while she waited. Judging by her expression, he could guess what the banker was saying. Mr. Sterling. Yes, VIP client. Credit limit? Let's just say there isn't one, ma'am. I see, Olivia said into the phone, her voice rising an octave. Yes, thank you. She hung up and stared at Alexander with an odd expression. Everything check out? He asked innocently. Yes, it did. But I still need you to sign a few forms just to verify your signature. Olivia had him sign one form, then a second, then a third, comparing each signature to his ID like a seasoned detective. "One last thing," she said, pulling out her phone. "I need a photo for our security records. Standard procedure for special guests." Alexander posed patiently as Olivia took 3 photos, each with flash. "All set," she said finally, handing him the key card. "The suite's on the top floor, the elevator—" "Olivia," a man's voice interrupted. "Is everything okay?" Olivia turned to see Robert Martin, the general manager, approaching with a professional smile. "No issues, Mr. Martin, just handling Mr.—" She glanced at Alexander. Sterling's check-in. Robert's reaction was immediate. His eyes widened, and his smile shifted from polite to genuinely deferential. "Mr. Sterling," he exclaimed, extending a hand, "what a pleasure to have you back. How was your trip?" Olivia watched, confused, as Robert greeted Alexander like someone important. "It was enlightening," Alexander replied, shaking the manager's hand. "Very different from what I'm used to." "I can imagine," Robert chuckled. "If there's anything you need—" "Mr. Martin," Olivia interjected, lowering her voice, "can I speak with you privately for a moment?" Robert looked surprised but nodded. Olivia pulled him aside and whispered urgently, "Be careful. He might be a very clever con artist. The card went through, but—" She gestured toward Alexander. "Look at him. Something's off." Robert followed her gaze. Alexander was calmly admiring a floral arrangement, his worn backpack at his feet, oblivious to their conversation. "Olivia," Robert said slowly, "do you know who this man is?" "A fallen heir? A lottery winner?" Olivia shrugged. "He didn't give many details." Robert opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. "He's a lottery winner." Across the lobby, Alexander caught snippets of their talk. "Lottery winner." He smiled to himself. "Why not? It's much simpler than explaining billions in inheritance and investments." "Yes," he said, stepping closer. "The lottery. Still getting used to it all." He gestured vaguely at the lavish lobby. Olivia nodded, satisfied her theory was correct. It made sense. A lottery winner, new to wealth, not yet accustomed to dressing for upscale places. "Well," Robert said, still processing, "congratulations on your win. If you need investment advice or—" "Actually," Olivia interrupted, suddenly feeling responsible, "I've already given him some basic tips, things newly rich people should know." Alexander bit his lip to keep from laughing. "Olivia's been very helpful." "I'm sure she has," Robert muttered, glancing between them as if trying to solve a puzzle. "Well, Mr. Sterling," Olivia said, resuming her professional tone, "your suite is ready. Breakfast is served from 6 to 10 a.m. Room service is 24/7 and—" She hesitated. "If you need help with anything, I'm always here." The sincerity in her voice touched him again. "Thank you, Olivia, truly." As Alexander headed to the elevators, backpack slung over his shoulder, and moving with far too much ease for someone heading to the hotel's priciest suite, Olivia turned to Robert. "Keep an eye out," she whispered. "New lottery winners are easy targets for scammers." Robert nodded slowly, still grappling with the fact that one of the country's richest men had just been mistaken for a homeless man by his own employee. "I'll keep my eyes open," he promised. As the elevator doors closed, Alexander finally let his smile break free. 3 weeks in the mountains had given him a new perspective on his gilded life. But Olivia had just given him something even more valuable, the experience of being treated like an ordinary person. The next morning, Olivia arrived at work with a mission. She'd spent the night feeling guilty for judging Alexander so harshly. The man had won the lottery, a life-changing event that deserved celebration, and she'd treated him like a potential criminal. Worse, he clearly didn't know how to navigate high society. She felt it was her moral duty to help him adapt to the world of the wealthy before he made an embarrassing mistake. Olivia opened a notepad and began writing furiously. "Survival Guide for the Newly Rich," she scribbled at the top, then crossed it out and wrote, "Basic Guide, How to Not Look Poor in Fancy Places." The list grew quickly. Never wear flip-flops in the lobby or any public space. Don't ask for discounts at the front desk. Even if the prices seem outrageous, don't stuff breakfast food in your pockets, no matter how tempting. Always greet staff politely, but don't get too personal. Use utensils for everything, even pizza if necessary. Don't take pictures of your food. It screams first time here. Never ask how much things cost at the restaurant. Use the bathroom to wash your hands, not for a full sponge bath. Don't discuss prices with other guests. Dress appropriately. No ripped shorts at dinner. Olivia reread the list with satisfaction. It was thorough, practical, and most importantly, it would save Alexander from future embarrassment. When Alexander walked into the lobby at 10 a.m., still in the same worn jeans but at least freshly showered, Olivia stopped him immediately. Mr. Sterling, perfect timing. She waved the paper in front of him. I've prepared something that'll really help you. Alexander read the title and nearly choked. Guide on how to not look poor. Exactly, Olivia beamed with pride. Basic rules to help you adjust to your new financial status. Trust me, this'll save you from awkward moments. Alexander scanned the list, trying not to laugh. Use utensils for pizza. Don't photograph food. Was she serious? This is very thorough, he said. 2 years of experience with all kinds of hotel guests, Olivia said confidently. I can spot a nouveau riche from a mile away. No offense. None taken, Alexander mumbled, still processing the idea of getting etiquette advice from a 26-year-old employee. Let's start with the basics, Olivia said. Rule number 1, never wear flip-flops in the lobby. Alexander looked down at his worn sneakers. What if I don't have the right shoes? Uh-huh. Olivia pulled a card from her purse. My friend Patricia works at a shoe store 3 blocks away. Tell her I sent you and she'll give you the staff discount. The irony was perfect. The richest man in the world being told how to save money on shoes. Thank you, Alexander said. Seriously, this is very helpful. You're welcome. Now rule number 5, use utensils for everything, even pizza. For pizza? Alexander feigned shock. But pizza's meant to be eaten with your hands. Olivia shook her head firmly. Not in places like this. Rich people eat pizza with a fork and knife always. Even pepperoni pizza. Especially pepperoni pizza. The more casual the food, the more formal the eating style. Alexander nodded seriously, as if absorbing ancient wisdom. Got it. Fork and knife for pizza, noted. Great, let's practice. Olivia led him to the hotel restaurant where lunch was being served. A few tables were occupied by businessmen in meetings, tourists planning their day, and a group of socialites gossiping. Table for 2, Olivia told the maitre d', who instantly recognized Alexander but remained professional. Of course, Ms. Dubois. Table 23 has a lovely view. Once seated, Olivia took her instructor role seriously. Remember, sit up straight. No elbows on the table and, she paused dramatically, we're ordering pizza to practice rule number 5. Alexander nearly burst out laughing. Pizza for lunch? Trust me, it's the ultimate test. The waiter, Pierre, who'd worked at the hotel for 15 years and knew Alexander since he took over the business, was slightly taken aback seeing the boss with Olivia but stayed polite. Good afternoon. What may I get started for you? A margarita pizza, Olivia said confidently, and 2 sparkling waters. Excellent choice, Pierre replied cautiously, avoiding Alexander's gaze. While they waited, Olivia continued the lesson. Rule number 6, don't take pictures of your food. It screams first time in a fancy place. What if I want to show my friends? Resist the urge. Rich people don't photograph food. They just eat. The pizza arrived in 15 minutes, served on an elegant plate with linen napkins. Alexander eyed the utensils beside the plate, like they were surgical instruments. Now show me, Olivia said, arms crossed. Alexander picked up the fork and knife with exaggerated care. He cut a tiny piece of pizza, chewed slowly, and swallowed with a thoughtful air. How's that? Olivia asked. Very refined, Alexander replied. At the next table, a middle-aged couple watched the scene with fascination. The woman whispered something to her husband, who shook his head in disbelief. Alexander continued, eating his pizza with a knife and fork, each movement deliberate and correct. He cut slices into perfect little shapes, chewed with his mouth closed, and dabbed his lips with the napkin after every bite. Perfect, Olivia whispered, beaming with pride. You're a quick learner. Across the restaurant, 3 businessmen stopped talking to watch. One discreetly pulled out his phone, as if documenting a rare species of human behavior. Can I ask you something? Alexander said, cutting another tiny piece. Sure. Why are you helping me? Yesterday you thought I was a criminal. Olivia blushed slightly. Because I judged you by your appearance, and that was wrong. My grandma always said it doesn't matter where you come from, it's where you're going that counts. You won the lottery, that's amazing. You deserve every chance to fit in properly. Her sincerity touched Alexander deeply. Here was someone who genuinely cared about his well-being, unaware he already had more chances than he could ever use. Your grandma sounds wise, he said. She was. She cleaned houses for rich families and always told me the real difference between classes isn't money. It's knowledge, knowing how to act, what to wear, how to speak. Olivia gestured expressively. That's why I'm sharing what I know with you. Alexander stopped eating, genuinely moved. Olivia, that means a lot to me. You're welcome, it's the least I can do. They finished lunch, Alexander demonstrating excellent pizza with utensils technique. As they left the restaurant, Olivia was practically floating with satisfaction. Lesson 1 complete, she announced. Tomorrow we'll move to rule number 7, never ask prices at restaurants. I can't wait, Alexander said. And for the first time in years, he meant it. As Olivia returned to work, glowing, from saving a nouveau riche from future embarrassment, Alexander headed to his suite, smiling. 3 weeks in the mountains had taught him simplicity, but Olivia was teaching him something even more valuable. Sometimes, the most generous people are those with the least to give, and eating pizza with a fork and knife, while ridiculous, could be surprisingly fun with the right person. Today's the big day, Olivia announced on the 3rd day of Operation Civilize. Alexander walked into the lobby to find her clutching a notepad and sporting a determined expression that would have made a general proud. Advanced etiquette training in a real-world setting. Alexander, who'd woken up thinking about corporate mergers and quarterly reports, was instantly pulled into the alternate reality where he was a lottery winner in desperate need of social training. Real-world setting? He asked, amused. L'Étoile Dorée, Olivia said with reverence, as if naming a sacred pilgrimage site. 3 Michelin stars. If you can survive a dinner there without embarrassing yourself, you'll officially graduate from How to Be Rich 101. Alexander nearly choked. L'Étoile Dorée was one of his favorite restaurants. He dined there at least once a month and knew the chef, Jean-Pierre Dubois, personally. But Olivia didn't need to know that. Sounds intimidating, he said, feigning nervousness. That's why I brought study materials. Olivia opened her notepad, revealing diagrams that looked like architectural blueprints. Complete layout of proper cutlery placement in a fine dining restaurant. The diagram was a work of art in itself. Olivia had drawn plates, glasses, napkins, and utensils with obsessive precision, each item numbered and connected by arrows to tiny handwritten notes. Salad fork, main fork, dessert fork, she recited like a sacred chant. Left to right, always left to right. Knives on the right, then spoons after knives. Never ever use the wrong fork for the wrong dish. What if I forget? Alexander asked with a genuinely worried face. Then you become a meme on someone's Instagram, Olivia said. Seriously, I've seen it. A guy used a fish fork for his steak and went viral under "Tu failed nouveau riche." Alexander made a mental note to check if that hashtag was real. 2 hours later, they were seated at L'Étoile Dorée. Olivia beamed. With pride for securing a last-minute table, she didn't know Alexander had personally called the manager. The restaurant was buzzing, dim lighting, hushed conversations, and an air of sophistication that cost about $500 per person. Remember, Olivia whispered, pretending to study the menu while side-eyeing Alexander, sit up straight, napkin on your lap, and for heaven's sake, don't blow on your soup. People blow on soup? Alexander asked innocently. Normal people, yes, rich people wait for it to cool naturally. The sommelier approached. Francois, who'd known Alexander for 5 years and always saved him the best wines. Francois glanced at Alexander, then Olivia, then back at Alexander, clearly confused but maintaining flawless professionalism. "Good evening," he said with a thick French accent. "May I suggest a wine to pair with your dinner?" Olivia spoke up. "Nothing too pricey," she said, shooting Alexander a meaningful look. "Something democratic." Francois blinked slowly. In 5 years of serving Alexander Sterling, he'd never heard anyone request a democratic wine for the man. who once ordered a $1,500 bottle of Chateau d'Yquem just because he felt like something sweet. Perhaps a modest Bordeaux, Francois offered cautiously. Perfect, Olivia exclaimed. See, she whispered to Alexander, always show you're in control of your spending. Rich people don't need to prove anything by buying the most expensive wine. Alexander nodded seriously, mentally noting this revolutionary financial philosophy. The first course arrived, an edible work of art that looked sculpted by angels. Olivia went into full teacher mode. Now watch, she said, picking up the outermost fork. Always start with the outermost utensils and work inward. It's like unwrapping a gift, layer by layer. Alexander followed her instructions with exaggerated focus, cutting tiny bites and chewing as if solving a complex math problem. Excellent technique, Olivia whispered, proud as a mother watching her child take their first steps. Disaster struck during the second course. Alexander was slicing his fish with surgical precision when he accidentally knocked his elbow into his wine glass. Red liquid spilled across the table like a crime scene, staining his white shirt and causing a complete silence in the restaurant. "Oh no," Olivia exclaimed, jumping up. "Your shirt." "It's nothing," Alexander said. But Olivia was already in full crisis mode. "Come on, to the restroom. We need to rinse it before it sets." She practically dragged Alexander through the restaurant, past tables where other diners watched the commotion with barely veiled interest. Olivia was so focused on the wine stain that she didn't notice how every server subtly bowed as Alexander passed. "Good evening, Mr. Sterling," murmured Pierre, the maitre d'. "Everything okay, Mr. Sterling?" asked Marie, the assistant sommelier. "Need assistance, Mr. Sterling?" offered Jean-Claude, the head waiter. Olivia, preoccupied with stain removal strategies, took these greetings as a case of mistaken identity. "That's not Mr. Sterling," she corrected automatically. "That's Mr. Alexander, the lottery winner." The staff exchanged puzzled glances, but kept their professional smiles. In the men's restroom, Olivia insisted on escorting him to the door. She gave Alexander instructions on stain treatment. "Cold water, always cold water. Hot water sets the stain," she shouted through the door. "Got it?" "Got it," Alexander replied, secretly impressed by Olivia's domestic knowledge. When they returned to the table, the restaurant manager, Philippe Laurent, was waiting with a concerned expression. "Mr. Sterling," Philippe said, completely ignoring Olivia's presence, "I'm terribly sorry about the incident. May I offer you a clean shirt? We have some designer pieces in our VIP wardrobe." Olivia looked at Philippe, then Alexander, then back at Philippe. "Excuse me," she interrupted, "but you're mistaking my friend for someone else. This is Alexander, not Mr. Sterling." Philippe looked genuinely perplexed. "But madam, this is indeed understandable mistake," Alexander cut in quickly, giving Philippe a look that clearly said, "Don't blow my cover." "It happens more often than you'd think." After 15 years in fine dining, Philippe had learned that the whims of ultra-wealthy clients were often inexplicable. If Alexander Sterling wanted to pretend he wasn't Alexander Sterling, who was he to argue? "Of course," Philippe said slowly. "My mistake, Mr. Alexander. May I still offer the new shirt?" "That won't be necessary," Olivia said firmly. "We handled it with cold water and basic cleaning techniques." After Philippe left, clearly confused but maintaining his professional dignity, Olivia turned to Alexander with a smug look. "See, that's exactly the kind of embarrassing situation we're trying to avoid. Servers in fancy places can be so presumptuous. They assume every well-dressed guest is some kind of celebrity." "Very perceptive," Alexander agreed. "Now where were we?" "Oh, right. Fish cutting technique. The secret is a 45-degree angle." The rest of the dinner proceeded with Alexander receiving subtle greetings from the entire staff, while Olivia continued her mission to educate him, completely unaware that she was giving etiquette lessons to a man who likely dined at places like this more times in a month than she had in her entire life. When they finally left, Olivia was glowing. "Mission accomplished," she announced. "You acted like a true gentleman. Well, except for the wine incident, but that can happen to anyone." "Thank you for your patience," Alexander said sincerely. "You're welcome." As they walked down the street, Olivia chatted about her plans for the next phase of Alexander's transformation. He couldn't help but smile. It had been years since he'd had this much fun, all thanks to a determined receptionist who'd decided to save him from himself. The fact that she was saving him from problems he'd solved decades ago only made it more entertaining. "We need to talk about your wardrobe," Olivia declared the next morning, storming into the lobby with the determination of a general planning D-Day. "You can't keep looking like you wandered out of a wildlife documentary." Alexander looked down at his outfit. Faded jeans, a cotton t-shirt, and the same worn sneakers that had caused such a stir 3 days ago. To be fair, Olivia had a point. "Any suggestions?" he asked, feigning helplessness. "Suggestions?" Olivia laughed as if he'd asked if she had plans to colonize Mars. "Alexander, I have a master plan. We're going to transform you from beggar to billionaire in one afternoon." She pulled a list from her pocket, because of course there was a list. Olivia Dubois didn't do anything without proper documentation. First stop, Garrison's second-floor men's section. "We're going to buy as many clothes as possible for the least money, using advanced negotiation tactics I learned from watching reality shows about coupon pros." Alexander blinked slowly. "Advanced negotiation tactics from reality TV? Extreme couponing and bargain hunters," Olivia said proudly. "Watched every season twice. You'll be amazed at my skills." 40 minutes later, they were at Garrison's, Olivia marching through the aisles like a military commander inspecting troops. Alexander followed, fascinated by the seriousness with which she approached the mission of buying clothes. "First," she said, stopping dramatically in front of a rack of suits, "we need to establish your new visual identity. You want to look new money, but not new money who doesn't know how to spend it." "There's a difference?" Alexander asked, genuinely curious. "Oh, there's a huge difference," Olivia replied, picking up a navy suit. "The new money who knows how to spend buys understated quality. The new money who doesn't buys loud, flashy stuff that screams, 'Look at me. I have money.'" A salesman approached Thomas, a middle-aged man with a perfectly trimmed mustache and a professionally friendly smile. "Can I assist you?" Thomas asked. "Yes," Olivia exclaimed, taking complete control. "My friend here needs a full wardrobe. Suit, shirts, ties, shoes, everything. But we want fair prices." Thomas glanced at Alexander, then Olivia, trying to figure out the unusual dynamic. "Of course, I can show you some options," Thomas began. "Wait," Olivia interrupted, raising her hand like a traffic cop. "Before we see anything, I need to know, do you offer discounts for bulk purchases?" "Well, we have some promotions." "What kind of promotions? Specific percentages? Free items? Let's talk hard numbers." Alexander watched captivated as Olivia interrogated poor Thomas like he was a suspect in a police investigation. She'd pulled out a notepad and was literally taking notes on the store's discount policy. "If we buy 3 shirts, do we get a discount on the 4th? Olivia asked. "We have a buy 2 get 1 half off deal. And ties. What's the deal on ties?" "Olivia," Alexander tried to interrupt gently, "maybe we could just look at the clothes." "Shh," Olivia waved him off. "This is the most important part. Never start negotiating after you fall in love with the product. Always set the terms first." Thomas gave Alexander a look that clearly said, "First time shopping with her, huh?" "Let's start with suits," Olivia announced finally. "Show us 3 options in the mid-price range. And I want to see the price tags before he tries anything on." Thomas guided them through the section, showing suits ranging from $400 to $800. Olivia inspected each tag like it was a legal document, muttering numbers to herself and jotting notes. "This one," she said, pointing to a $600 Hugo Boss suit. "What's your best offer?" "Well, the price is $600. $600 is the tourist price," Olivia said with confidence she definitely hadn't earned. "What's the price for serious shoppers buying multiple items?" Thomas glanced around nervously, as if about to share military secrets. "I can check with my manager for maybe 5% off." 5%? Olivia feigned shock. Thomas, you're dealing with a customer who's about to spend thousands today." "Thousands? 5% is what you give someone buying socks." Alexander was trying so hard not to laugh that his shoulders shook. Olivia had transformed into a ruthless negotiator, using haggling tactics better suited to flea markets than department stores. "Let me talk to the manager," Thomas sighed, clearly overwhelmed. As Thomas walked away, Olivia turned to Alexander with a triumphant look. "See, you have to show you're not desperate. Salespeople can smell desperation a mile away." "You're impressive," Alexander said sincerely. Thomas returned with an older, stern-looking man, presumably the manager. I understand you're looking to make a substantial purchase, the manager said with professional calm. Exactly, Olivia clapped her hands. My friend here needs a complete makeover. Flexible budget, but we want real value. I can offer 10% off your total if you spend over $1,000. Olivia pretended to consider the offer like it was an international peace treaty. 15%, she counted, and free alterations. 12% with free alterations. Deal. Olivia shook his hand dramatically. 2 hours later, Alexander stood in front of the dressing room mirror, wearing the Hugo Boss suit, a crisp white shirt, and a blue silk tie. The transformation was remarkable, from scruffy traveler to polished executive in minutes. Oh my gosh, Olivia gasped as he stepped out. Alexander, you look like a CEO. Because I am one, Alexander thought, but aloud he said, You think so? Think, I know. Thomas, we'll take it all, the suit, 3 shirts, 2 ties, and those black Oxford shoes. Thomas began calculating the total. We're at $2,040 before the discount. And with our negotiated discount? Olivia asked eagerly. 1936. Olivia turned to Alexander with a smile bright enough to light up Times Square. We saved over $200. $200, Alexander. Impressive, Alexander agreed, pulling out his credit card. But wait, Olivia said, grabbing his arm. Let me try one last thing. She turned to Thomas. That $200 tie my friend was looking at. What's the best price you can do? Thomas glanced at the Hermes tie Alexander had casually mentioned. Well, the general discount already applies. Come on, Thomas. A $200 tie on a nearly $2,000 purchase. You can do better than that. After 10 more minutes of intense negotiation, Olivia managed to knock the tie down to $150. Victory, she cried, doing a little victory dance in the middle of the store. $50 off a tie. I'm a bargain genius. Alexander paid the bill, smiling as Olivia proudly shared her negotiation tactics with every employee who'd listen. The trick, she explained to a passing cosmetics saleswoman, is to never accept the first price, ever. There's always wiggle room if you know how to push. As they left the store, Olivia carrying multiple shopping bags like war trophies, Alexander discreetly excused himself to use the restroom. In reality, he went back to Thomas. The difference my friend negotiated, he said quietly, handing Thomas $300 in cash. Keep it as a tip. She worked hard and deserves to feel like she scored a real win. Thomas looked at the money, then back at Alexander. Sir, that's very generous. And Thomas, Alexander smiled. If she ever comes back here, make sure she gets whatever discount she asks for. She's got a good heart. When Alexander rejoined Olivia on the sidewalk, she was still glowing from her victory. Alexander, do you realize what we just did? We turned you into a polished gentleman and saved a fortune. I should seriously consider becoming a personal shopper. You really should, Alexander agreed, watching Olivia arrange the shopping bags with a kind of maternal pride. As they walked back to the hotel, Olivia enthusiastically planning the next phase of Alexander's makeover. He thought about how strange and wonderful it was to see someone get so excited about saving $50 on a tie that cost less than what he usually tipped waiters. Olivia Dubois was teaching him the real value of money, one lesson at a time, and he was savoring every minute. The next day, Olivia showed up in the lobby carrying a picnic basket that looked like it had been packed by an overzealous Italian grandmother worried about underfed grandchildren. Surprise, she announced, swinging the basket like she'd just won the lottery herself. Today we're doing something different. No etiquette lessons or shopping, just good old-fashioned fun at Lincoln Park. Alexander eyed the overflowing basket. How many people are you planning to feed? Just us, but... Olivia blushed a little. Maybe I went a bit overboard. I cook when I'm nervous, and last night I was very nervous. Nervous about what? About today. Olivia waved her arms dramatically. I've never had a picnic with a, lottery winner. What if you're used to caviar and champagne? What if peanut butter sandwiches offend your newly refined taste? Alexander held back a laugh. Olivia, I grew up on peanut butter sandwiches. They're my favorite. Olivia's face lit up. Really? Oh, thank God, because I made 12 different kinds. Peanut butter and jelly, peanut butter and banana, peanut butter and honey. 12 kinds? Alexander interrupted, impressed. And I brought chips, homemade cookies, apple juice, and Olivia opened the basket to reveal a feast big enough for a small army. Maybe some brownies. 40 minutes later, they were sitting on a checkered blanket in Lincoln Park, surrounded by enough food to feed a festival. Olivia had chosen a spot under a tree with a view of the lake, where families picnicked and couples strolled. "Perfect," she declared, lining up the sandwiches like little soldiers. "Nature, fresh air, and homemade food. This'll keep you grounded after your life-changing win." Alexander took a bite of a peanut butter and banana sandwich, savoring not just the nostalgic flavor, but the irony of the situation. When was the last time he'd eaten in a public park? Probably college, over a decade ago. "Tell me about your dreams," he said, genuinely curious. "You mentioned you wanted to write." Olivia's eyes sparkled. "Well, I've always wanted to write stories about ordinary people in extraordinary situations. Like," she waved a half sandwich, "a receptionist who discovers her neighbor is a retired spy, or a librarian who wins the lottery and travels the world hunting rare books." "Those sound like fascinating stories," Alexander said sincerely. "They're just dreams," Olivia shrugged. But Alexander saw the spark of passion in her eyes. "My real dream is to open a bookstore cafe in Wicker Park, a cozy place where people can come to read, write, talk about books. It'd be like a giant living room for book lovers." "Why don't you do it?" Olivia laughed, but there was a hint of sadness in her voice. "With what money? Do you know how much it costs to start a business in Chicago? Between rent, inventory, permits, decor, we're talking at least $200,000. To her, it was like trying to buy the moon. Alexander chewed thoughtfully. $200,000 to him, it was less than the cost of his watch. But to Olivia, it was a lifetime of unattainable savings. "What about you?" Olivia asked. "What do you plan to do with your lottery winnings? Any crazy dreams you've always wanted to chase?" Before Alexander could answer, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and frowned. It was David Chang, his CFO, probably about the Sterling Industries merger with the German hotel chain he'd been negotiating for months. "Sorry," he said to Olivia. "I need to take this. It's important." "Mr. Sterling," David said without preamble when Alexander answered, "we have an issue with the Mueller merger. They're demanding to renegotiate the acquisition terms." "Hold on, David," Alexander interrupted quickly, noticing Olivia listening. "Can you simplify it?" "Simplify? Sir, we're talking about $2.3 billion in?" "Simplify," Alexander said firmly, shooting Olivia a pointed look. There was a confused pause on the other end. "Oh, you're undercover." "Got it. Exactly. So what's the situation in simple terms?" After 15 years working for Alexander, David had learned to read his boss's odd signals. "Well, sir, let's say the big promotion you were expecting at work is getting complicated due to some company policy changes." Alexander nearly laughed at David's attempt to turn a massive corporate merger into everyday office lingo. "And what do you suggest?" "Maybe we should discuss it in person at your place later." "Great idea, thanks." Alexander hung up and turned to Olivia, who was looking at him with an odd expression. "Work?" she asked. "Yeah," Alexander said, trying to sound casual. "McDonald's can get pretty complicated sometimes." Olivia blinked. "McDonald's has corporate mergers." Alexander immediately realized his mistake. "Well, not mergers, team mergers. When they combine the morning shift with the afternoon shift to save costs." "Oh," Olivia nodded, impressed. "Wow, even McDonald's is modernizing. Meetings about rules, team mergers. You must be some kind of senior manager." "Something like that," Alexander mumbled, mentally vowing never to take business calls near Olivia again. "What language were you speaking at the end?" Olivia asked, curious. "It sounded like German." Alexander froze. He'd automatically said "see you later" in German to David, a habit from negotiating with German firms. "It was German," he admitted. "You speak German?" Olivia's eyes widened. "That's amazing. Where'd you learn it?" "Movies," Alexander said quickly. "I watch a lot of German films." "What kind of films?" "Documentaries about hamburgers. McDonald's is a global company, so..." Alexander was desperately improvising. It helps to know other languages. Olivia nodded, clearly impressed. Such professional dedication. Learning German to be better at McDonald's. Alexander's phone buzzed again. This time it was Maria Garcia, head of the South American division. Hola, Miguel, Maria said cheerfully. We need to discuss the São Paulo contracts. Maria, Alexander interrupted in fluent Spanish, I'm in an informal meeting. Can we talk later? Informal meeting? Are you sick? Very funny. I'll call you in an hour. Okay, but the Brazilians are insisting on a response for 1 hour, Maria, I promise. Alexander hung up and found Olivia staring, mouth agape. That was Spanish now, she said slowly. It was. You speak Spanish and German? And French, Alexander admitted, realizing he was too far in to back out. French too? Olivia practically shouted, making a nearby family turn. Alexander, how many languages do you speak? Just 5. Maybe 6 if you count basic Italian. Olivia stared at him like he'd just confessed to being an alien. 5 languages. For working at McDonald's? Well, Alexander scrambled for a plausible excuse. I watch a lot of movies and shows. Netflix has a great international selection. You learned 5 languages from Netflix? And YouTube, Alexander added, hoping it sounded more believable. There are lots of educational channels and apps like Duolingo. Olivia kept staring, as if trying to decode a secret message. Alexander, that's incredible. You must have a crazy high IQ. Just determination, Alexander said modestly. Determination? Olivia laughed, but it was a laugh full of admiration. Alexander, you're a polyglot lottery winner working at McDonald's who learned languages from watching movies. You should write a book about your life. His phone buzzed a 3rd time, his French office. Nope, Alexander said aloud, hanging up without answering. No more work today. But what if it's important? Olivia asked. Nothing's more important than peanut butter sandwiches with a friend, Alexander said sincerely. Olivia smiled, a grin that lit up her entire face. You know how to say the right things. They spent the rest of the afternoon eating, talking, and laughing. Olivia shared stories about odd hotel guests. Alexander made up fake adventures about life at McDonald's, and both carefully avoided topics that might reveal more than they intended. As the sun began to set, Olivia packed up the picnic leftovers with near military efficiency. Best day in weeks, she declared. Thanks for letting me do this. Thanks for inviting me, Alexander replied. It's been a long time since I relaxed like this. As they walked back through the park, Olivia stopped suddenly. Alexander, yes? Promise me that if fame goes to your head, you won't forget regular people like me. Alexander looked at her, this kind woman who'd shared her dreams, her homemade food, and her friendship with no expectations. Olivia, he said seriously, I promise that people like you are exactly the ones I'll never forget. And for the first time in days of well-meaning lies, Alexander Sterling had spoken the absolute truth. Olivia stayed up all night, staring at the ceiling of her tiny Pilsen apartment as her mind processed the strange events of the past few days. Alexander spoke 5 languages. He got calls about corporate mergers at McDonald's. Every staff member at fancy restaurants greeted him like he was someone important. Something wasn't adding up. The next morning, Olivia arrived at work with a mission: find out who Alexander Sterling really was. She'd watched enough CSI episodes to know that any serious investigation started with discreet observation. The problem was, Olivia Dubois had about as much stealth as an elephant trying to hide behind a lamppost. I need a disguise, she muttered, rummaging through the lost and found drawer behind the reception desk. Something to make me invisible. 5 minutes later, Olivia emerged, transformed into a bizarre version of a private detective. Oversized black sunglasses covering half her face, a bright pink sun hat left by a guest, and a New York Times with holes cut out for observation windows. The final look was more escaped mental patient than professional spy. Perfect, Olivia whispered, positioning herself behind a marble pillar in the lobby. Now I just wait for the target to show. What Olivia didn't know was that the moment she put on those ridiculous sunglasses, Mark, the head of security, had alerted his team. All units, Mark said over the radio. Olivia's having some kind of breakdown. She's in a weird disguise hiding behind Pillar 3. Keep your distance, but keep an eye on her. Mark, replied Marcus, another guard. She's got a newspaper with holes in it. I know, Marcus. I know. At 10 a.m., Alexander appeared in the lobby, wearing one of the new shirts Olivia had helped him buy. He strolled casually toward the elevator, unaware he was being tailed by a woman in oversized sunglasses, wielding a newspaper like a shield. Olivia slunk behind him, trying to sync her steps with the lobby's background music. Unfortunately, the music was a slow waltz, and Olivia moved like she was in an action movie chase scene. "Suspect heading to elevator," she whispered to herself, pretending to read the paper. Far too confident for a new lottery winner. What Olivia also didn't notice was that Marcus and Luke, two security guards, were now following her, keeping a respectful distance while trying to figure out what she was up to. "She's talking to herself," Luke reported over the radio. "Noted," Mark replied. "Keep monitoring." Alexander stepped into the elevator and Olivia dashed for the stairs. Determined to reach his floor before him, she climbed 2 flights in high heels, arriving breathless at the 3rd floor just as the elevator doors opened. "Aha," she whispered triumphantly, raising her holy newspaper to hide. Alexander stepped out and walked down the hall toward the presidential suite. Olivia followed at what she considered a professional distance, but was actually obvious to anyone with functioning eyes. "Suspect entering presidential suite," Olivia muttered, taking mental notes. Far too comfortable for someone who should be awed by luxury. Behind her, Marcus and Luke had taken the stairs, both trying to make sense of why the hotel's most normal receptionist had turned into a cartoonish secret agent. Olivia decided she needed a better vantage point. She positioned herself behind an abandoned housekeeping cart in the hallway, her sunglasses reflecting the ceiling lights like spotlights. "Base, this is Agent Olivia," she whispered dramatically to herself. "Target in position, awaiting further developments." 15 minutes later, the suite door opened and Alexander emerged, now in a perfectly tailored suit. Olivia nearly dropped her newspaper. Where was the awkward lottery winner who needed help picking ties? "Complete appearance change," she murmured. "Highly suspicious." Alexander headed back to the elevator, and Olivia resumed her pursuit. This time, she upped her spy game by borrowing a room service cart to blend in. The result was Olivia pushing a cart full of clean towels down the hallway, wearing oversized sunglasses and a pink sun hat, doing her best to look like an ordinary housekeeper. "This is brilliant," she whispered. "Nobody suspects the cleaning staff." Marcus watched Olivia pass with the cart and spoke into his radio. "Mark, now she's taken a room service cart. She stole it? Well, borrowed without permission. Keep monitoring. And someone tell housekeeping they're missing a cart." Olivia tailed Alexander to the ground floor, where he entered the general manager's office. She parked the cart behind a giant decorative plant and pulled out her holy newspaper again. Through the makeshift holes in the New York Times, Olivia saw Alexander enter Robert Martin's office and close the door. The two men began a serious conversation, gesturing and looking at documents. "Secret meeting with management," Olivia whispered excitedly. This confirms everything. What Olivia couldn't hear was the actual conversation. "Alexander, I need to talk to you about Olivia," Robert said. "She's acting strange." "Strange how?" Alexander asked. "Well, yesterday she asked me about security protocols for identifying corporate spies. And today she showed up dressed like... Honestly, I don't even know how to describe it." Alexander glanced out the office window and saw Olivia crouched behind a plant, wearing giant sunglasses and holding a newspaper with holes. "Oh," he said, trying not to laugh. "Let me handle it." But in Olivia's mind, the serious talk between Alexander and Robert only confirmed her growing suspicions. "Corporate spy," she whispered dramatically. "Probably infiltrated to steal trade secrets. That's why he speaks 5 languages and gets mysterious phone calls." Olivia was so engrossed in her theory that she didn't notice Luke approaching behind her. "Olivia," Luke said softly. Olivia yelped and jumped, knocking over the room service cart and sending towels flying across the lobby. "Luke," she shouted, still wearing the giant sunglasses. "You scared me." "Olivia, are you okay?" "You're hiding behind plants." "I'm not hiding," Olivia said with wounded dignity, adjusting her pink hat. "I'm investigating." "Investigating what?" Olivia glanced around, noticing several guests watching the scene. She lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Alexander isn't who he says he is." "Luke, I have evidence." "What kind of evidence?" "He speaks 5 languages, gets calls about corporate mergers, and I just saw him in a secret meeting with Mr. Martin." Olivia gestured dramatically with her holy newspaper. He's obviously a corporate spy. Luke looked at Olivia, her giant sunglasses, pink hat, wild theory, and made an executive decision. "Olivia," he said gently, "how about you take a little break? Maybe a coffee?" "I can't stop now, Luke. I'm about to uncover an international espionage ring." At that moment, Alexander stepped out of Robert's office and saw Olivia in the middle of the lobby, surrounded by scattered towels, wearing a disguise visible from space. "Olivia," he asked, clearly concerned, "are you okay?" Olivia turned to him, and even through the ridiculous sunglasses, Alexander could see suspicion blazing in her eyes. "I'm perfectly fine, Alexander," she said, emphasizing his name. "Just observing hotel activity to improve customer service." Alexander looked at the pink hat, the giant sunglasses, the holy newspaper, and the scattered towels. "In disguise?" he asked, trying not to laugh. "This isn't a disguise," Olivia protested. It's an alternative uniform for behavioral observation." And that's when Alexander Sterling realized his little charade had created a monster. Olivia Dubois was fully convinced she'd uncovered an international conspiracy, and he had no idea how to fix it without telling the truth. After the spy disguise fiasco, Alexander knew he had to do something drastic before Olivia called the FBI to investigate what she thought was a case of industrial espionage. His solution was risky: a romantic dinner. "Well, not exactly romantic," he muttered to himself while making arrangements. "More like a thank you dinner that might look romantic, depending on how the moonlight hits the table." Alexander had the staff set up the private rooftop terrace, usually reserved for corporate events and celebrity weddings. But instead of going all out with baccarat crystal and imported orchids, he gave specific instructions. Make it look like a lottery winner tried to plan something fancy. The result was an odd mix of genuine simplicity with unintentional touches of luxury Alexander couldn't fully hide. Olivia arrived on the terrace at 7 p.m., wearing the nicest dress she owned, a simple black dress she'd bought on sale 2 years ago. When she saw the setup, her suspicions about Alexander momentarily vanished, replaced by pure awe. "Alexander," she whispered, looking around, "this is beautiful." And it was. Fairy lights, which cost $300 each, gave the space a warm glow. A small table was set with plain white plates. And there were candles, $400 handmade ones that smelled of Himalayan jasmine, but looked perfectly ordinary. "I wanted to thank you," Alexander said, visibly nervous, "for everything you've done to help me. The makeover, the etiquette lessons, the advice. Without you, I'd still be trying to eat pizza with my hands." Olivia laughed, and her last doubts melted away. This wasn't a corporate spy. This was a sincerely grateful man. "You didn't have to do all this," she said, touched by the gesture. "I wanted to," Alexander replied honestly. And he meant it. He genuinely wanted to thank Olivia, even if his reasons were more complicated than she knew. The dinner started perfectly. Alexander had ordered food from the hotel restaurant, but requested simple dishes: grilled salmon, rice pilaf, and steamed vegetables. Nothing too fancy that might raise questions about his ease with fine dining. "So," Olivia said as they ate, "sorry about earlier. I guess I got a little paranoid." "Paranoid about what?" Alexander asked innocently. "Well," Olivia blushed, "promise not to laugh." "Promise. I kind of thought you might be a corporate spy." Alexander nearly choked on his salmon. "A corporate spy. I know it sounds ridiculous now, but you speak all those languages, get mysterious phone calls, and—" Olivia waved her fork. "Everyone seems to know who you are, like you're famous or something." "Maybe I just have one of those familiar faces," Alexander offered. "That must be it," Olivia agreed, relieved to have a rational explanation. "Like Tom Hanks, everyone swears they've met him." They continued talking and laughing, the mood growing more relaxed. Olivia shared stories about her family, her dreams of becoming a writer, and her theories about why rich hotel guests always made the most impossible requests. "Last week," she said, waving a spoonful of rice, "a woman asked me to make it rain less because it was ruining her honeymoon. Like I control the weather." Alexander burst out laughing. "What did you say?" "I told her I'd check with the weather department," Olivia said, making air quotes. "She was happy and tipped me $5. That's when disaster struck." Olivia was gesturing dramatically to demonstrate how she'd called the climate control department, when her elbow knocked over the lemon butter sauce. The dish tipped, spilling yellow sauce all over the front of her black dress. "Oh no!" Olivia cried, jumping up. "My dress. It's the only nice one I have." Alexander stood immediately and without thinking took off his shirt. "Here, use this to clean up." Olivia grabbed the shirt gratefully, too focused on the sauce disaster to notice what Alexander had handed her. Had she looked closer, she might have noticed the tiny Ermenegildo Zegna label, or the fact that the fabric felt like $800 Italian silk. "Thank you," she said, immediately dabbing the sauce off her dress with Alexander's shirt. Alexander watched in silent horror, trying to keep a straight face as Olivia used his very expensive shirt like a kitchen rag. She scrubbed the stain vigorously, then wiped her hands on the shirt, and even used a sleeve to mop up some drops that had landed on the table. "I think I got most of it," she said, checking her dress. "Your shirt is super absorbent." Alexander swallowed hard. The shirt now looked like a yellow map of Italy, with lemon sauce stains forming abstract patterns on what was once pristine silk. "Glad it helped," he managed to say. "I'll wash it and bring it back tomorrow," Olivia promised, still completely unaware of the garment's value. "Lemon butter comes out pretty easily if you know the right trick." "Don't worry about it," Alexander said quickly, imagining Olivia tossing the shirt into a regular washing machine with cheap detergent. Olivia, sensing she'd ruined the evening, began apologizing profusely. "Alexander, I'm so sorry. I messed everything up. You planned this beautiful dinner and I—" She gestured to her stained dress and the ruined shirt. "I'm a disaster in fancy situations." "Olivia," Alexander said firmly, "you didn't mess anything up. Accidents happen, but your shirt, it's just a shirt." A shirt that cost more than Olivia's monthly salary, but still just a shirt. Olivia looked at him with admiration. "You're so understanding. Most guys would have been upset. Why would I be upset over a little sauce?" "Because—" Olivia hesitated. "Well, that shirt must have cost at least $50. Even for someone who just won the lottery, $50 is still a lot." Alexander nodded seriously. "True, $50 is no small amount." Olivia felt even worse. "Look, I'll buy you a new shirt. It might take me a few weeks to save up, but—" "Olivia, no," Alexander interrupted. "It was an accident. And besides," he smiled, "it was worth it just to see you in action with your stain-fighting skills. You have very enthusiastic techniques." Olivia laughed, finally relaxing. "I learned from my grandma. She always said, any stain can be removed if you're determined enough. Your grandma was a wise woman." They finished dinner with Olivia still wearing the $800 Italian silk shirt tied around her waist like an apron, occasionally wiping her hands on it whenever she picked up something that might stain. Alexander watched each movement like someone witnessing a slow-motion car crash, unable to stop it but strangely fascinated. When they finally said goodbye, Olivia was still wearing the shirt. "This was the most charming evening," she said sincerely. "Thank you for showing me that lottery winners can be regular people." "Thank you for showing me that regular people can be extraordinary," Alexander replied. After Olivia left, Alexander stood alone on the terrace staring at the lemon sauce stain still on the table. He pulled out his phone and called his personal assistant. "James, I need you to order 12 more of those blue Zegna shirts I always wear. I have a feeling I'll need them." "12, sir." "May I ask why?" Alexander looked out at the city lights, thinking of Olivia probably trying to scrub lemon sauce off Italian silk in her tiny laundry room. "Let's just say I met someone with a very enthusiastic relationship with sauces." And for the first time in years, Alexander Sterling fell asleep smiling because of a ruined shirt. The next morning, Olivia woke up still smiling about the dinner. Alexander's shirt was hanging in her bathroom, soaking in a mix of detergent and baking soda that her grandmother swore could remove any stain known to man. "Poor guy," she murmured, making instant coffee. "I bet that shirt is one of the only fancy things he bought with his lottery money." While waiting for her coffee, Olivia sat at her 3-year-old second-hand laptop. She'd woken up with an idea for a story. The lottery winner who didn't know he was rich. It would be based on Alexander, of course, with some changes to protect his privacy. But what's a good last name for the character? She wondered, tapping the sluggish keyboard, something that sounds fancy but not too much. Then a mischievous thought struck her. Why not Google Alexander Sterling? to make sure there wasn't a famous Alexander Sterling that could cause copyright issues. Just a quick search, she told herself, opening her browser, to avoid any legal trouble. Olivia typed Alexander Sterling into the search bar and hit enter, expecting maybe a few LinkedIn pages and social media profiles of ordinary people with the same name. What appeared on the screen made her coffee cup fall off the table. Alexander Sterling, CEO of Sterling Hospitality Group, estimated net worth $8 billion. Olivia blinked, then blinked again, then rubbed her eyes and stared at the screen once more. "It's gotta be someone else," she muttered, clicking the first link. There must be millions of Alexander Sterlings in the world. The Forbes page opened, showing a professional photo of a man in an impeccable suit, hair perfectly styled, and a confident CEO smile. Olivia stared at the picture for a long moment before her brain could process what she was seeing. It was Alexander. Her Alexander. The Alexander she taught to eat pizza with a fork and knife. "No!" Olivia shouted so loudly her neighbors banged on the wall. She frantically clicked from link to link, each page confirming what she desperately wanted to deny. Alexander Sterling, 34, heir to the Sterling Hotel empire, one of America's top 10 richest people. The Sterling Hospitality Group owns 44 luxury hotels worldwide, including the iconic Grand Majestic Hotel in Manhattan. "The Grand Majestic!" Olivia shrieked at her laptop. "He owns the hotel I work at." She kept reading, each line hitting like a punch to the stomach. Known for his private nature and discreet philanthropy, graduated from Harvard Business School with honors, fluent in 6 languages. 6 languages. Olivia clutched her head. "I told him he learned them from Netflix." Memories hit her like embarrassment grenades, offering him $5 for a sandwich, suggesting he stay at a shelter on 52nd Street, teaching him how to use utensils properly, negotiating discounts for him at department stores, explaining how not to look poor in fancy places. Olivia scrolled down and found a photo gallery. Alexander at charity galas, always impeccably dressed, surrounded by other famous faces. Alexander opening a hospital he'd funded. Alexander receiving philanthropy awards. And then she saw it, a photo of him at a fundraiser, wearing the exact same shirt she'd turned into a cleaning rag the previous night. $800, she read in the caption, describing the billionaire's casual yet elegant look. The 800 Ermenegildo Zegna shirt. Olivia glanced toward her bathroom, where that $800 shirt was soaking in baking soda and detergent. "I ruined an $800 shirt," she screamed, falling off her chair. But the worst was yet to come. Olivia found a recent Vanity Fair article titled, "Why the Ultra-Rich Go Slumming, the New Trend of Living Like Ordinary People." Slumming, Olivia read with growing horror. More and more billionaires are trying to live like regular people as a form of escape. The realization hit Olivia like a speeding garbage truck. Alexander wasn't a lottery winner trying to fit into the world of the rich. He was pretending to be poor for fun. "He was slumming with me," Olivia shouted into her empty apartment. "I was his social experiment." She imagined Alexander laughing with his billionaire friends about the naive receptionist who tried to teach him manners. Probably making jokes about her money-saving tips, her lessons on not looking poor, her clumsy negotiation attempts. Olivia's phone buzzed. It was a text from Alexander. "Morning. Hope the shirt wasn't too tough to clean. Can we meet for lunch?" Olivia stared at the message, then the gala photos of Alexander on her laptop, then the message again. "Meet for lunch," she read aloud, "so he can keep having fun at my expense." Olivia typed back, "Sure. Looking forward to our next etiquette lesson, Mr. Sterling." She hit send before she could change her mind. 2 minutes later, her phone rang. It was Alexander. Olivia stared at the screen, imagining the look on his face as he realized the jig was up. Part of her wanted to answer and yell at him. Another part wanted to pretend nothing had happened and live in blissful ignorance. But the part that won was the one drowning in embarrassment, wanting to hide under the bed for the next decade. Olivia let the phone ring. She closed her laptop and went to the bathroom to check if there was any hope for the $800 shirt. There wasn't. "Well," she muttered, staring at the ruined shirt, "now I know why all the waiters were bowing to him." And so, Olivia Dubois did the only rational thing a person could do after realizing they'd spent weeks making a fool of themselves for a billionaire. She crawled back into bed and pulled the covers over her head. Olivia spent 2 hours under the covers, rehearsing her confrontation speech. She decided she wasn't going to just disappear and let Alexander keep enjoying the joke. No, she was going to march right into that hotel and tell him exactly what she thought. So unfortunately, Olivia forgot it was Tuesday morning, peak tourist hour at the Grand Majestic. The lobby was packed with Japanese tourists snapping photos, a group of senior travelers from Texas checking in, and at least 3 influencers filming affordable luxury in Manhattan. Olivia pushed through the crowd like a general heading to battle, still wearing the clothes she'd slept in, her hair looking like it had been styled by a tornado. Alexander was at the reception desk, talking to Robert about monthly reports, when he saw Olivia storming toward him like a guided missile. "Olivia," he called, concerned by her expression. "Are you?" "You were mocking me," Olivia shouted across the crowded lobby. Silence fell instantly. The tourists stopped taking photos. The Texas seniors stopped complaining about room prices. Even the influencers paused their videos. "Olivia," Alexander tried, lowering his voice, "can we talk privately?" "Talk privately?" Olivia laughed hysterically. "Like you talked privately with your billionaire friends about the stupid receptionist who tried to teach you manners." Alexander noticed at least 5 tourists pulling out their phones to record. "I never said any such thing to anyone," he said sincerely. "Sure you didn't." Olivia was in full fury mode now. "You just laughed silently while I made a complete fool of myself." She started counting on her fingers, her voice rising with each point. "I taught you to eat pizza with a knife and fork." A Japanese tourist whispered something to his wife, clearly wondering if this was some kind of performance art. "I made you a manual on how to not be poor." The Texas group was clearly enjoying the free show. "I taught you how to use coupons." 2 influencers started recording discreetly, sensing viral content. "I told you not to steal the hotel toiletries." "From your own hotel." Alexander bit his lips so hard he nearly drew blood, trying not to laugh at the absurdity of the situation. "Olivia," he tried again, "please let me explain." "Explain what?" Olivia threw her arms up dramatically. "How funny it was when I offered a billionaire $5 to buy a sandwich." The crowd murmured. "Billionaire," someone whispered. "Or how hilarious it was when I suggested you stay in a shelter." Olivia continued, now holding the crowd in the palm of her hand. "Or when I negotiated like crazy to get you a discount on your $200 tie." Alexander noticed Robert standing behind the counter, watching the scene like it was a live soap opera. "And the best part," Olivia went on, voice dripping with sarcasm, "is when I explained why rich people are out of touch with reality. To one of the richest men in America." A tourist started clapping, thinking it was part of the hotel's entertainment. "Olivia, please." Alexander stepped closer. "No?" Olivia raised her hand like a traffic cop. "Don't come near me. I can't believe I fell for your trick." "It wasn't a trick. It was what? A social experiment? A charity project? A way to feel better about yourself by pretending to be normal." Alexander opened his mouth to respond, but Olivia wasn't done. "Oh, and thanks for ruining my favorite blouse with lemon sauce on an $800 shirt I used as a cleaning rag." The crowd murmured again. An $800 shirt was impressive, even for wealthy tourists. "Wait," Alexander said, confused. "You ruined your blouse?" "Your shirt!" Olivia shouted. "I ruined your $800 shirt by using it to wipe sauce." Alexander blinked. "Olivia, you didn't ruin anything. I have dozens of those shirts." That was clearly the wrong thing to say. "Dozens?" Olivia nearly exploded. "You have dozens of $800 shirts." Robert discreetly signaled security to stand by, not to restrain Olivia, but to manage the growing crowd. "And you know what else?" Olivia continued, clearly running on pure emotional exhaustion. "I bet you even investigated my life. You checked my financials just to make sure I was poor enough for your slumming experiment." Alexander froze. Olivia saw the look on his face and her world collapsed. "You did investigate me," she said softly, all her anger turning into deep hurt. "You actually dug into my life." "Olivia, it's standard security protocol." "Security protocol?" Olivia shouted, now with tears in her eyes. "You violated my privacy just to have fun with me." The crowd murmured, uncomfortable. This had stopped being entertainment. It was clearly something personal and painful. "I never meant to hurt you," Alexander said honestly. "But you did," Olivia said, her voice breaking. "You made me feel special, like I was helping someone, and the whole time I was just your amusement." Olivia looked around, realizing for the first time that dozens of people were filming and taking photos. "Perfect," she muttered. "Now I'm going to be a meme too." And then Olivia Dubois did the only dignified thing a person could do after discovering they'd been fooled by a billionaire in front of 50 tourists with cameras. She turned and walked out, tripped on the revolving door, recovered, and walked out again. The crowd erupted in murmurs and camera flashes. Alexander stood in the lobby, surrounded by curious tourists and the sound of Robert urgently whispering into his radio about damage control. And for the first time in his life, Alexander Sterling felt like the poorest man in the world. Olivia returned to the hotel 3 hours later, wearing clean clothes and clutching a resignation letter she'd written and rewritten 7 times. She'd decided her only option was to leave with dignity, formally submit her resignation, and disappear from the face of the earth. The lobby was still bustling, but thankfully there were no crowds recording epic confrontations. Olivia marched straight to the reception desk where Robert was working. "Mr. Martin," she announced dramatically, "I'm here to submit my resignation." Robert looked at the letter, then at Olivia, and let out a deep sigh. "Olivia, you don't have to do this." "Yes, I do," Olivia declared, her voice echoing through the lobby. "I can't keep working in a place where I was humiliated by—" She glanced around and lowered her voice to a theatrical whisper. "Certain billionaires who think it's fun to trick innocent employees." A few guests cast curious glances their way. "I accept your resignation," Robert said softly, "but I'd like you to reconsider." "Never." Olivia slapped her hand on the counter. "My dignity is worth more than any job." She turned to leave dramatically, her hair whipping behind her like in a movie. Unfortunately, Olivia had forgotten she was wearing new shoes with slick soles. Her feet slipped on the polished marble floor, and she stumbled spectacularly, arms flailing like helicopter blades as she tried to regain balance. Alexander, who'd quietly entered the lobby hoping for a chance to talk, instinctively stepped forward to help. "Olivia!" he called, reaching out to catch her. "No!" Olivia shouted back, swatting his help away with such force that she lost her balance even more. "I don't need your help." She waved her arms to push Alexander back, lost her footing completely and fell backward, straight into the decorative fountain at the center of the lobby. The splash was epic. Olivia resurfaced from the fountain like a very angry mermaid, soaked, with a water plant stuck in her hair and looking like she'd been attacked by an octopus. The entire lobby froze. Tourists, staff, guests. Everyone stared at Olivia sitting in the fountain, dripping and radiating absolute indignation. "I'm fine," she shouted to no one in particular, trying to maintain her dignity while pulling algae off her face. "Perfectly fine." Alexander stepped toward the fountain. "Olivia, let me help you." "I said I'm fine." Olivia tried to stand with dignity, but her foot slipped again and she fell back into the water with another splash. That's when at least 6 people started recording. Olivia finally managed to climb out of the fountain with the dignity of a wet cat, leaving a trail of water and pond plants on the marble. "I'm going home now," she announced, trying to sound dignified despite dripping chlorinated water. "I wish you all a—" dry. Have a nice dry day." She headed for the exit, leaving wet footprints behind, when she realized she'd lost a shoe in the fountain. Olivia looked at the shoe floating among the lily pads, then at the staring crowd, then at Alexander, who was clearly trying not to laugh. "You can keep the shoe," she said with as much dignity as she could muster. "Consider it a parting gift." And so, Olivia Dubois walked out of the Grand Majestic Hotel, limping on one foot, leaving behind a trail of water, a floating shoe, and what would soon become the week's most viral video. 3 hours later, Olivia was at home, trying to forget the most embarrassing day of her life, when her phone started buzzing non-stop with notifications. The first video she saw had 2 million views and the title, "Receptionist teaches billionaire how to be poor." The second had 3 million, "Hotel Karen attacks billionaire owner and falls in fountain." The third, with 5 million views, plot twist, she was trying to teach hotel owner manners. Olivia scrolled through the comments. I died laughing when she yelled about coupons. His face, trying not to laugh, is priceless. Better plot twist than Netflix. Someone give this woman a reality show. Olivia tossed her phone onto the couch and shouted into her empty apartment, "I'm a meme." Her phone rang. It was her best friend, Sarah. "Olivia, you're on TikTok." "I know," Olivia groaned. "You've got 5 million views. You're famous. Famous for falling in a fountain after teaching a billionaire to use coupons," Olivia sighed. "Exactly how I always dreamed." "Look on the bright side," Sarah said cheerfully. "At least now you have a story to tell." Olivia stared at her still buzzing phone. "Sarah, yeah? Next time I say I'm going to confront someone dramatically, remind me to wear shoes with grip." And so, Olivia Dubois became internet famous for all the wrong reasons, proving that sometimes life has a very peculiar sense of humor when it comes to dignity and decorative fountains, too. Weeks after what Olivia now called the fountain incident, she found a job at Books and Tears, an independent bookstore in Wicker Park that seemed decorated by someone who believed chipped teacups and dying plants were the height of bohemian sophistication. The owner, Harold, a 60-something man with a philosopher's beard and glasses he insisted on calling vintage, hired her mostly because he wanted to boost his store's foot traffic. "You're famous," Harold said on her first day. "People will come just to meet you." Olivia thought Harold was overly optimistic. She was wrong. The first day, 12 people showed up. The second, 23. By the third, Olivia stopped counting when she saw a line forming on the sidewalk. "You're the fountain girl," a 20-something woman exclaimed, waving her phone like Olivia was a celebrity. "Can I get a selfie? Did you really teach that billionaire to use coupons?" A middle-aged man asked, clearly fascinated. "My daughter watched the video 50 times, a proud mother said. "She says you're a feminist icon for standing up to the capitalist patriarchy." Olivia glanced at Harold, who was beaming as sales soared. "Maybe," Olivia said slowly, "I should make a themed section." And so, the Books for People Pretending to be Poor section was born, a curated collection of books on budgeting, social etiquette, and memoirs of wealthy people who'd chosen to live like the poor for the experience. It included classics like How to Live on $1 a Day When You Have Billions, Survival Guide for Formerly Rich, and Olivia's personal favorite, Slumming for Dummies. "It's brilliant social commentary," Olivia told a reporter from the Brooklyn paper who'd come to interview the local literary sensation. "It explores the disconnect between economic privilege and authentic human experience." Olivia had learned to talk like that after watching several documentaries. On contemporary art, the section became so popular that Harold asked Olivia to create themed workshops. "Workshop on spotting billionaires in disguise," Olivia announced to a crowd of 20 in the bookstore. Clues include speaking multiple languages learned from watching movies, getting mysterious calls about mergers at McDonald's, and eating pizza with a fork and knife without complaining. The audience laughed and took notes like they were in a college lecture. While Olivia built her new career as a detector of disguised rich people, Alexander Sterling was going through the worst identity crisis of his adult life. Sitting in his top-floor office at the Sterling Tower, he stared out at the city, feeling utterly empty. Olivia had been the first person in years to treat him like an ordinary human, and he'd blown it. Worse, her words kept echoing in his head. Rich people are out of touch with reality. Was she right? Was he really that disconnected? That's when Alexander decided to make a bold change. He was going to follow all of Olivia's money-saving tips. "Mr. Sterling," said James, his assistant, entering the office, "the French restaurant confirmed your reservation for tonight and—" "Cancel it," Alexander said. "I'm eating at home." "Peanut butter sandwich," James blinked. "Sir?" "And James, next time we go to the grocery store, remind me to bring coupons." "Coupons, sir." "Discount coupons." Olivia said saving money is important. Over the next few days, Alexander's staff watched with growing concern as their boss began practicing household budgeting strategies. He started bringing peanut butter sandwiches to work in brown paper bags. He began using coupons at the supermarket, causing confusion and delays trying to use 50-cent coupons on $1,000 purchases. He started reusing paper towels to avoid waste. He stopped drinking his $500 wine and switched to juice cartons. "Mr. Sterling," said David Chang, his CFO, during a meeting, The shareholders are worried. There are rumors you're having financial difficulties. Why? Alexander asked, munching on a peanut butter sandwich. Well, sir, yesterday you were seen using a $2 coupon at Whole Foods. The manager posted it on Instagram. David, do you think I'm out of touch with reality? Sir, normal people use coupons, David. Maybe I should learn from them. David stared, unsure if his boss was joking or having a midlife crisis. Sir, you own a $12 billion empire. You don't need coupons. It's not about need, Alexander said, leaning back in his chair. It's about understanding what matters to people who don't have billions. David left the meeting convinced Alexander had lost his mind, but Alexander was determined. He started small, turning off lights to save electricity, washing dishes by hand instead of using the industrial dishwasher in his penthouse, and even attempting to mend a torn sock. Each act felt like a tiny rebellion against the sterile perfection of his billionaire life. Meanwhile, Olivia's fame at Books and Tears grew. The bookstore had become a local sensation, with tourists and locals alike flocking to meet the Fountain Girl and buy her curated books. Harold, thrilled with the revenue, gave Olivia a raise and creative control over the store's events. "You're a natural," he told her, watching her charm a group of college students during a workshop on frugal living for aspiring artists. Olivia smiled, but inside she was still processing the Alexander debacle. She'd blocked his number after the fountain incident, determined to move on. But every time someone mentioned billionaires or coupons, her stomach twisted. Late one evening, as she was closing the bookstore, a delivery arrived, a small package addressed to Olivia Dubois, fountain icon. She opened it to find a book, The Art of Living Simply, Lessons from a Billionaire's Mistake. The author's name hit her like a punch, Alexander Sterling. Inside was a handwritten note. "Olivia, I'm sorry. I learned more from you than you'll ever know. Please read this." Alexander. Olivia stared at the book, torn between throwing it in the trash and curiosity. She flipped it open. The dedication read, "To the woman who taught me the value of a $5 and a peanut butter sandwich." Against her better judgment, she started reading. The book was a memoir of Alexander's 3 weeks living incognito, interwoven with lessons from Olivia's etiquette training. It detailed his realization that wealth had insulated him from real human connection, and how Olivia's kindness, her $5 offer, her earnest advice, her relentless determination, had shown him what it meant to care without expecting anything in return. Chapter titles like Pizza with a Fork and the $800 shirt incident made Olivia laugh despite herself, but others, like The Cost of Deception, hit harder. Alexander admitted his mistake in letting Olivia believe he was a lottery winner, explaining it started as a way to escape his own world, but became a lesson in humility. By 2 a.m., Olivia was sobbing into a tissue, both touched and furious. The book was raw, honest, and infuriatingly charming. She wanted to hate Alexander, but his words felt genuine. The final chapter outlined his new mission, to live more simply, give more generously, and rebuild the trust he'd broken. "I don't expect forgiveness," he wrote, "but I hope to earn it through actions, not words." Included was a coupon, hand-drawn no less, for one free apology dinner. "No lemon sauce allowed." Olivia laughed through her tears, then groaned. "Why does he have to be so likable?" she muttered. The next day, Olivia unblocked Alexander's number and sent a cautious text. "Read your book. Nice try, dinner's a maybe." Alexander's reply was instant. "Name the place." "I'll bring coupons." Olivia rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress a smile. She wasn't ready to forgive him entirely, but maybe, just maybe, she'd give him a chance to prove he'd learned something. A week later, they met at a small diner in Wicker Park, Olivia's choice to keep things firmly unfancy. Alexander arrived in jeans and a plain t-shirt, no $800 silk in sight. "No presidential suite tonight?" Olivia teased, sipping her milkshake. "I'm trying to follow your rules," Alexander said, holding up a coupon for a free dessert. "Found this in the newspaper." Olivia laughed, the first genuine laugh she'd shared with him since the fountain. They talked for hours, about her bookstore dreams, his efforts to live more simply, and the absurdity of their first meeting. Alexander admitted he'd donated $200,000 to a literacy program in Olivia's name, hoping to support her dream without overstepping. "It's not a bribe," he said quickly, seeing her raised eyebrow. "It's a start." Olivia studied him, searching for the billionaire who'd tricked her. Instead, she saw someone really trying to understand her world. "You're still on probation," she warned, pointing a fry at him. "But you get points for the coupon." Alexander grinned, and for the first time in weeks, Olivia felt like maybe, just maybe, she could trust him again. 6 months later, Books and Tears opened a second location, a bookstore cafe in Wicker Park, exactly as Olivia had dreamed. The sign above the door read, "Dubois Books and Bites," funded partly by Alexander's donation and partly by Olivia's relentless hustle. Alexander attended the grand opening, proudly carrying a tray of peanut butter sandwiches. The viral fountain video had faded from the internet's memory, replaced by stories of Olivia's bookstore empire and Alexander's quirky new reputation as the billionaire who uses coupons. Olivia never fully forgave Alexander for the deception, but she did invite him to her weekly book club, where he was tasked with bringing snacks. And every so often, when no one was looking, they'd share a pizza, eaten with forks and knives just to keep the tradition alive. So, what did you think of the story? Rate it 0 to 10 in the comments and let me know where you're tuning in from.